Saturday morning smelled like pancakes and crayons. Joe was building a zoo out of cereal boxes. Ezra was out back fixing the wobbly gate. The doorbell rang twice, polite, then insistent. I wiped batter off my hands and opened it. My parents stood there with a pastel gift bag and faces I didn't recognize. 6 silent years. Not a card, not a call. Now a teddy bear peeking through tissue paper like we were an ordinary family. "Hi, Mara," my mother said, voice trembling. "We heard you're expecting again." I didn't invite them in. That was the first decision I made that saved us more hurt than I can explain. I wish I were being dramatic. I wish this were just awkward. But what came next proved I wasn't paranoid. It proved I finally understood what family had really meant in our house. Growing up, the rules multiplied faster than dust. Dad labeled the pantry. Mom scheduled my smiles. No sleeveless shirts, no social media. Books pre-approved by them, then logged on a clipboard that hung off a nail like a threat. If I slipped and brought home a novel they hadn't vetted, it vanished. I'd find it weeks later in the garage, tucked under the lawn seed, smelling like fertilizer. "We don't put filth in our minds," Dad would say, without looking up from his antique radio hobby. "You're the responsible one, Mara. Don't make us worry." Responsible meant obedient. In my family, those were synonyms. At school, I learned how to take up less space. Laugh quietly, apologize first. I got called reliable so often it felt like a leash. When I left for college at 18, I stood in my dorm room and waited for permission to breathe. It never came, so I breathed anyway. I met Ezra during a volunteer shift at the campus pantry. He was a second-year engineering student with a square jaw, gentle hands, and the kind of attention that doesn't demand a performance. He asked questions and then waited for the answers. That felt radical. We started spending our Saturdays stacking canned beans and teasing each other about our playlists. He drove an ancient Civic that coughed like a smoker. I kept granola bars in my bag so I had something to offer when the coughing got scary. He called me prepared. I called him trouble and meant it in the best way. 6 months in, I missed my period. We were careful mostly. The test turned positive. I sat on the bathroom floor with my knees under my chin, counting tiles to stay upright. I told Ezra at a park bench while a kid chased pigeons in circles that made me dizzy. He reached for my shaking hand. "What do you want?" he asked. I didn't know. I did know my parents would have a script ready, and none of the lines would belong to me. Ezra nodded. "Whatever we do together." Then he swallowed, looked like he was about to be sick, and asked me to marry him. It wasn't romantic. It was honest. I said yes to the honesty. I told my parents at Sunday lunch because I was naive enough to think the good china would make them gentler. My brother Dean was there in a tie he never loosened. Mom set out lemon water like it could cleanse the conversation. Dad carved the roast like a judge. "I'm pregnant," I said. "Ezra and I want to get married." Mom's knife clinked against her plate. Dad's mouth tightened until it was a straight line. Dean's eyebrows climbed his forehead, as if trying to escape the room. "Fix it," Dad said. "I'm keeping the baby." He set the carving fork down and folded his hands. "Then you can't stay here. Not while you're choosing chaos." He said it like he was protecting the world from a spill I'd made on purpose. They gave me until morning. When I came downstairs with 2 suitcases and a backpack, they were eating oatmeal. No one looked up. I said, "Ezra's picking me up." Dad pointed to the door like a traffic cop. Out front, Ezra and his parents, Marisol and Ken, pulled up in the coughing Civic and a minivan with a dented bumper. Marisol hugged me so tight, she whispered, "Breathe Mija into my hair." Ken lifted both suitcases without asking if they were heavy. I turned around once hoping for a crack in the facade. The curtains didn't move. The first months felt like we were building a house in a storm. I left school. Ezra took extra shifts. Marisol converted their sunroom into a bedroom for us, squeezing a dresser between a fern and a stack of quilting magazines. Ken found an old wooden crib at a garage sale and sanded it until it gleamed. I got a part-time job at a second-hand bookstore where the owner, a woman with purple glasses and a soft laugh, kept a stool behind the counter for my swollen ankles. I tried my mother's number twice, once to say we were okay, once to say I was scared. Both went to voicemail that promised she'd get back to you shortly. She didn't. We got married in Marisol, in Ken's backyard, with fairy lights tangled in a maple tree, and paper cups that said cheers in a looping font. Ezra's cousin played guitar. Ken cried. Marisol cried. I didn't. I kept waiting for grief to feel aloud. Joe was born in late spring. The delivery was long. I wanted my mom anyway. I wanted her to tell me I was brave or foolish or anything but invisible. It was Marisol's cool hands and low voice that got me through the last hour. When the nurse placed Joe on my chest, she smelled like warm bread. I cried then. Love makes room for the tears that pride won't. We moved to a tiny rental with peeling paint and an enormous lilac bush that made the whole block smell like a promise. Ezra finished his degree part-time and took a job with a local firm. I went back to school for a teaching credential, one class at a time. I sent my parents a photo when Joe took her first steps between the coffee table and the couch. I mailed holiday cards. I wrote, "We miss you," without adding, "but we're okay." Every envelope disappeared into a black hole of their choosing. I stopped sending things. Years steadied. We bought a townhouse with creaky stairs. Joe learned to read and asked questions about everything. She called Marisol and Ken Nona and Pop, and they answered every time. Then I told my cousin Nia during a quick call about a family recipe that I was 4 months pregnant again. I didn't post it anywhere. I didn't plan a reveal. I whispered it like a secret I was protecting from the wind. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. "Can we come in?" my father asked, shifting the gift bag between his hands. He'd lost weight. He looked smaller and somehow more rigid, like a folded chair. I was still holding the doorknob. My heart beat in my throat like it was trying to leave. Ezra stepped in from the yard grass on his jeans, eyes moving from me to them and back again. He didn't say anything. He stood behind me like a wall I could lean on. "We made mistakes," Mom said. She lifted the tissue paper to show a hand-knit blanket in a soft seafoam color. "I make one for every baby I imagine." The words should have complicated me. They didn't. They slid off the surface I'd built to survive. "We want to know our grandchildren," Dad added, as if this were a reasonable sentence after the last 6 years. "Sit," I said, finally moving only enough to let them into the front room where Joe's crayons were still scattered across the rug. I sat across from them with Ezra beside me, my fingers worrying the hem of my shirt. They talked. Fear back then. Pride later. Time passing. Regret gathering, like dust in a house no one cleans. They said they thought I'd throw away my life. They said they thought Ezra would leave. They said they were wrong. They asked to meet Joe. They asked to be there this time. 6 years of quiet ache pressed up against my ribs. I pictured the night Joe had a fever, and we took turns counting her breaths. The first day of kindergarten, when she looked back 3 times to make sure I was still there. The long list of ordinary moments they'd missed because loving me had conditions. "I need time," I said. "If there's any path forward, it starts with the 4 of us. No gifts, no surprise visits, no contact with Joe until I say so." For a second, my father's face hardened into the father. I remembered a snap, a rule, a consequence. Then he swallowed it. "We can do that," he said too quickly. "I'll text you a time and place," I said, standing. Neutral, public, short. Mom asked to hug me. I let her. It felt like hugging a coat on a rack. They left a phone number already written on a neat piece of stationery. The door clicked shut behind them. Ezra wrapped his arms around me. My legs remembered how to shake. "Are you okay?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I'm clear." Out back, Joe yelled that her cereal box giraffe had escaped. I went to help her fix the zoo's fence hands, steadying cardboard that refused to stay put. I texted my parents a time and the name of a diner near our house. 1 hour, just us, no gifts. As I hit send, I told myself this was wisdom, not cruelty, a boundary, not revenge. I told myself people can change. I also told myself to watch what they did next. The diner smelled like burnt sugar and coffee grounds. I picked a booth that faced the door so I could see them coming. I texted clear rules, 1 hour, just us, no gifts, public place. My phone buzzed against the table until I flipped it face down. Ezra had offered to come. I told him I needed to walk in alone. They beat me there anyway. Mom stood when I approached. Dad didn't. He gave me a once-over, like I was late to a job interview he didn't think I deserved. A paper placemat sat in front of him, half covered in tidy notes written in block letters. The manager's special banana pancakes was circled twice. Control looks harmless when you draw it in pen. "Thank you for meeting us," Mom said. She tried a smile. It trembled and then tried again. I slid in. 1 hour, I said. We keep it on the rails. A server with a name tag that read Asha poured coffee without asking. "They said you take it with cream," she chirped friendly. "I'll grab some." I hadn't told them how I take anything in years. My mother had. Asha brought creamers shaped like tiny cups and a plate of lemons. When she set them down, she leaned closer, conspiratorial. "We've got you all set for next month, too." Mr. Holt said the same booth works. She winked. And left 2 menus. Next month. I didn't look at my father. He adjusted his napkin into a perfect triangle. "We thought it would help to have a routine," he said. "Structure heals." "Structure is not the same thing as control," I said. And I didn't agree to recurring anything. Mom reached for my hand. I kept both of mine curled around the coffee mug. Heat through ceramic, anchor by force. Dad cleared his throat. "We made a mistake." He began like he was reading a statement to a board. "We misjudged Ezra. We misjudged your capacity. We were frightened for your future. Fear makes fools of us." He waited for me to nod. I didn't. He moved on without it. "We've watched from a distance," he said. "You have a stable life, a home, a marriage that appears sound. Our assessment was wrong." "You didn't assess," I said. "You sentenced." Mom swallowed. "Mara, please, You were sure that love means compliance," I said. "That hasn't changed today, has it?" Asha came back with pancakes like a peace offering none of us had ordered. Banana coins glistened under syrup. "On the house," she said softly. "He said it used to be your favorite." I felt 12 again, the year Mom kept a spreadsheet of approved meals. I remembered the column labeled exceptions and how my name never had one. "I don't want pancakes," I said, gentle to Asha, and flat to my parents. Dad's jaw ticked. "You always liked." I used to like a lot of things before liking them cost me access to my family. Silence grew legs and climbed into the booth with us. Mom spoke into it, voice thin. "We want to meet Joe," she said. "We want to be there for this baby. We're ready to be grandparents." "I hear what you want," I said. "What I need is different. Adult dinners, small, predictable. You show up, you listen, you don't push. After time months, we revisit anything with Joe." Dad's mouth flattened into the line I grew up obeying. "We apologized," he said. "We're her grandparents. We have rights." Across the aisle, a toddler pressed his palms to the glass pastry case and fogged it with his breath. His mother tugged him back, patient. "No," I said. "You forfeited the claim the night you pointed at the door. Whatever rights you think you have, start with respect. We build or we don't, but we do it slow." He pushed the untouched pancake plate an inch with one finger. "We don't beg to see our own grandchild." "Then don't," I said. "You're not begging. You're being offered a path. It's narrow because we're new at this and I'm protecting my kid." Asha hovered with a coffee pot and the practiced politeness of someone who's seen family fights in public since she learned to balance a tray. "Anything else for you folks?" "We're fine," I said. Mom tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked down. When she looked up again, her eyes were wet. "I knit that blanket thinking about the baby," she whispered. "I didn't bring it here because you asked me not to. I followed the rules." "Thank you," I said. "Rules aren't the same as trust." Dad's voice dropped. "If you're going to keep punishing us, we can't." "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm protecting my family." He stood too fast. His chair screeched loud enough to turn heads. "We won't be managed by our child," he said. "I'm not trying to manage you," I said. "I'm managing me." He tossed a cash tip big enough to look generous and small enough to be petty. Mom hesitated. "Could we try again?" she asked. "I can come alone next time." "That's not the point," I said. "Next time we all come and we try without pretending you decide the terms." They left without finishing anything. The pancakes cooled into a sticky monument to assumptions. Asha slid into their spot across from me for 30 seconds, eyes kind. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I'm clear." She nodded like she understood the difference. "Want a to-go cup for the coffee?" "Please." I walked home with a paper cup that burned a line in my palm and a clock in my head counting down to the next decision. Ezra opened the door before I knocked. He read my face faster than words. "They booked another reservation," I said. They wanted to skip the part where accountability feels bad. He pulled me in until my cheek hit the cotton of his t-shirt. Grass and soap. Safety. "I'm proud of you," he said into my hair. "You didn't let them write the script." Part of me hoped it would be different, that they'd say, "We'll do whatever it takes," and then actually do it. He sighed. "Hope is healthy," he said. "We just don't use it as a leash." We sat at the kitchen table while Joe colored a dragon under a rainbow and asked if dragons like broccoli. I said some do. We both laughed like normal, because normal keeps kids safe. My phone buzzed. A text from Nia. "Aunt Linda called me. She said your dad is saying you refused reconciliation." I told her that's not what boundaries are. Also, she asked me for Joe's school schedule. I didn't give it. Heads up. My stomach dropped. I typed back, "Thank you for telling me. Please keep anything about Joe private." Nia responded with a string of hearts and a final "I've got you." Breadcrumbs don't look like clues until you line them up. The recurring reservation, the rights language, the early reach for Joe's schedule. I felt the pattern forming like a bruise you can't see yet, but already protect. That night, I wrote the message I should have sent before the diner. "Dad, Mom, thanks for meeting. Here are the boundaries, so we're all clear. 1 monthly dinners with the 3 of us and Ezra if he chooses. Public place, 1 hour. 2, no contact with Joe. No gifts, no appearances at school or activities. 3, no scheduling recurring reservations or events on my behalf. 4, if you keep pushing past these, we pause for 3 months and try again later. If you can respect them, we move forward. I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting my child and myself." I read it out loud to Ezra. He nodded once. Approval without ownership. I hit send and set the phone down like it could explode. Mom replied in 3 minutes. "We can do that, sweetheart. We just miss you. I'm sorry for the past. Dad took longer. You're turning a private matter into a legal document," he wrote. "Family doesn't need rules to love each other." I didn't answer. Love without rules is how I got erased the first time. I slept badly. Dreams about locked cabinets and missing keys. I woke before my alarm and stood in the doorway watching Joe's chest rise and fall, small, steady breaths. A world worth guarding. By morning, Mom had followed up with a message about recipes she wanted to try next time. Dad sent a link to an article about grandparents healing estrangements, like a defense attorney submitting evidence. I filed both under noted and didn't engage. At school drop-off, Joe's teacher waved and asked about her reading log. I answered like a normal parent. On the way home, a silver sedan idled at the curb half a block from our house. It wasn't theirs. It probably wasn't anything. I still memorized the first 3 digits of the plate before it turned the corner. Ezra texted a photo at lunch. Joe's dragon taped to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a tomato. "Protector of vegetables," he captioned. I laughed in the middle of the grocery store aisle next to the mustard. 6 brands, all yellow, some with seeds, one with honey. I bought the cheap jar on purpose. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole and saw a delivery driver balancing a stack of packages wrapped in cartoon paper. "For Joe," he said when I cracked the door. "From grandparents." My chest went cold. "Return to sender," I said. "Please," Mark refused. He frowned. "You sure?" "Yes." He took the stack back to the truck. I stood there with my hand on the door jamb until he drove away, and only then realized I'd been holding my breath. Mom texted an hour later. "Did the gifts arrive? Just books and art stuff. Nothing big. We wanted to show good faith." I didn't respond. The boundary had been simple. No gifts has no footnotes. I forwarded a screenshot of her text to a folder Ezra had created labeled Documentation. He's not a litigious person. He's a builder. He knows that good structures start with clear lines and records you can trust when memory scrambles. That evening, we ate roasted chicken and green beans and laughed at Joe's broccoli dragon, pretending to breathe garlic breath. After she went to bed, I told Ezra about the car and the packages. He listened without interrupting, then locked the side gate and checked the motion light bulb because that's how he says "I love you" when the air is thin. I was rinsing dishes when my phone glowed again. Nia heads up X2. Aunt Linda told the church ladies you're struggling mentally and that Ezra is controlling your access. I shut it down, but I thought you should know. I dried my hands and typed, "Thank you. Please keep me posted if they ask about Joe's school again." "Church ladies?" Ezra asked, loading the dishwasher. Mom's favorite stage, I said. Applause optional. He wiped his hands on a towel and leaned back against the counter. Do you want me at the next dinner? If you're up for it, I said. Dad hears you in a way he won't hear me. It makes him careful. I'll be careful, he said. We set the next date for a Tuesday. Same diner. New rule: if they pushed, we left. No speeches, no litigating the past. Just, we're done for today, we'll try again next month. Tuesday arrived humid and bright. I wore flats, so I could leave fast if I needed to. Ezra came this time, sat beside me, instead of across a quiet line I could lean against. They were already there. Asha had drawn 3 hearts on our placemats in blue pen. When she poured coffee, she whispered, Do you want me to run interference if it gets weird? She said it like she meant it. Thank you, I said. We'll be okay. We were okay until we weren't taught. It started small. Mom asked about the baby. I answered. Dad asked about Joe's soccer schedule. I said we weren't sharing that yet. He sipped his coffee and tried again with a subtler fork. We could show up and sit in the back. Quietly. No one would need to know who we are. Joe would know, I said. He smiled, a thin, dry thing. Children adjust. Ezra's hand found my knee under the table, a steady press. We won't be doing that, he said. Calm, even. Dad's eyes slid to Ezra. We misjudged you, he said. But you ought to know you're part of the reason this has taken so long. The influence you have. I don't influence Mara, Ezra said. We decide together. Dad's laugh was quiet. Of course. I pushed my plate away. We're done for today, I said. We'll try again next month. Mom reached for me. Please, honey, she whispered. Just a photo of Joe. Something small. Asha appeared like she'd been summoned by a flare. Can I box anything up for you? She asked brightly. No thanks, I said, standing. Dad didn't stand. You can keep running, he said softly, a warning wrapped in pity. You can teach Joe to run too, but one day she'll ask why you kept her from her family. I'll tell her the truth, I said. That you had conditions for loving us, and we chose love without conditions instead. We left money on the table and walked into the kind of afternoon heat that makes everything feel stalled. Ezra didn't speak until we reached the car. Proud of you, he said. Again, I laughed once sharp. I hate that being proud has to feel like this. Sometimes it does, he said. We can do hard things. We drove home with the windows cracked. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and crayons. I felt like a taut wire finally loosened. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, Dean. My brother in a suit with his tie straight and his jaw set, the years barely touching him except to sharpen the parts that already cut. Ezra whispered, Do you want me to get it? I shook my head. I opened the door enough to block the entry with my body. Now's not a good time, I said. He smiled like a mirror, all teeth, no warmth. I didn't ask if it was. He put his hand on the door, not hard, just a suggestion designed to feel inevitable. Behind me, I heard the slide of Joe's chair on tile, the soft thump of small feet. Ezra gently said, Hey, kiddo, let's finish that dragon, and his voice pulled her back like a tide. I stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind me until the latch clicked. We're not doing this inside, I said. Dean's eyes flicked to the door and back. Then we'll do it here. His smile didn't reach his eyes. It never had. The sun sat low enough to stab light under the porch awning. Dean didn't blink. He planted his dress shoes on our welcome mat like he owned the ground. Mom's been crying for a week, he said. Dad can't sleep. You could end this. You mean comply, I said. He smoothed an invisible wrinkle from his sleeve. You always twist words. I came to talk sense into you. I'm not 12, I said. And this is my house. You live in a townhouse off a frontage road, he said. Like humiliation might work, where logic wouldn't. Let's not pretend. I'm not pretending, I said. I'm protecting. He leaned in close enough for me to count the gray hairs at his temple. Here's the deal, he said softly. You bring Joe to Mom and Dad's this weekend. Quick visit. No drama. We post a photo. People stop talking. Everyone moves on. People I asked. He shrugged. Family, church, friends. The committee, I said. He rolled his eyes. You've made a spectacle of this. Dad said you sent him a boundary list, like a lawyer. I sent expectations. I don't need permission to define safety in my home. The baby shower, he said. Mom has already booked the fellowship hall. She's got volunteers. She's knitting. You're going to break her heart again. He said it like heartbreak was a weapon I kept under my bed. I didn't look away. Cancel it, I said. We're not doing events. It's not up to you, he said. It is. He took a breath and then changed tactics. Mom's blood pressure is up, he said. Dad's having chest pains. This is killing them. If they're unwell, they should rest, I said. Not stalk my front door. His mouth twitched. You always had a cruel streak. The porch light off in daylight held a dead moth behind the glass. I stared at it to keep my voice level. Leave, I said. You're not welcome without an invitation. He pressed his palm against the door like he might push past me by accident. You won't shut me out, he said. I'm family. You were family when I needed you, I said. You made your choice. He smiled, then sharp amused. You mean when you chose Ezra over us? Don't rewrite the script to make yourself the victim. Behind me, the soft scrape of Joe's chair. Ezra's voice floated down the hall, warm and steady. Hey, Dragon Master, I need a ruling, he said. Do broccoli eat tiny clouds, or do clouds eat tiny broccoli? Joe laughed. The sound prickled the back of my throat. Last warning, I said to Dean. Step away from the door. He didn't. His fingers closed around my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, just firm enough to say I could be moved. I pulled free. Touch me again and I call the police. He blinked like he hadn't anticipated the word. Police! He glanced past me toward the hallway, where Ezra's voice had gone quiet. He exhaled through his nose and let his hand fall. You're not well, he said, changing shape once more. Everyone can see it. Paranoid. Hostile. You're keeping a child from her grandparents because of ancient grudges. Dad said you were always easily led. By whom, I asked. He smirked. By whoever gave you attention. I stepped back and closed the door. He spoke another sentence I didn't care to hear to the wood. I turned the lock. Ezra was already there, eyes searching my face. I shook my head once. I was shaking everywhere else. Joe peeked around Ezra's leg. Who was that, she asked. A salesman, I said. He wanted to sell us a vacuum. We already have one. Does it eat dragons? She asked, grinning. Only if they're dusty, I said. Back to your broccoli clouds. Ezra listened while I recounted the porch. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said, we documented and reached for the drawer where we keep a notebook and envelopes. I wrote down the time, the exact words. I remembered the part where he grabbed my wrist. Ezra added a note. Camera didn't pick up audio at the door. We'll adjust settings. He set a reminder to call the security company. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom Dean said, you're still very angry. Honey, let's not make this bigger than it is. We just want to see our granddaughter before she forgets us completely. I stared at the sentence until the words blurred. She had never met Joe. Forgets us completely was the kind of lie you tell yourself so you don't have to change anything. No visits, I wrote back. Adult dinners only. If you keep sending people to my door, we won't meet again for 3 months. No reply. I called Nia. He came, I said. He tried to force an entry. He said the church hall is booked for a shower. Did you know about this? Nia groaned. I did not know, she said. Aunt Linda asked me what colors you liked. I told her not to plan anything. She kept talking about how appearance matters. I'm sorry. It's not on you, I said. Also, she added, voice lower, they dropped your name at the women's group, said you were struggling. I shut it down. Thank you, I said. Can you send me anything you see screenshots? Messages. Of course, she said. I'm your cousin, not their spy. We hung up. Ezra and I pulled the folder from the cabinet labeled documentation and slid in the new notes. He pressed his palm flat on the stack, like he was smoothing a wrinkle in a blueprint. I hate this, he said. Me too, I said. We adjusted the doorbell camera angle and set the alert sensitivity up 1 notch. Ezra added our password phrase, sourdough, to Joe's school pickup list and confirmed only he and I were authorized. The next morning, I requested a meeting with the principal. She had a warm face and a firm handshake. We sat in a small office with posters about kindness and a basket of stress balls shaped like planets. I need to formally narrow Joe's release list, I said. Her biological grandparents are not authorized. No exceptions. If anyone asks about a special situation, call me, and no one else. She nodded. We take custody very seriously, she said. We'll add a password. If you don't say it, we don't release. Thank you, I said. The word is sourdough. She smiled. Great choice, she said, typing. Hard to guess. Easy to say. On my way out, Mrs. Park from 2 doors down stopped me at the crosswalk. She's 60-ish, with sharp eyes and a garden that blooms in neat rows. "Can I show you something?" she asked, lifting her phone. She played a clip from her doorbell camera, my mother's face through a windshield. The silver sedan I'd noticed, parked on our street, time-stamped. 2 days in a row. She didn't get out, Mrs. Park said. Just sat there. I thought maybe she was lost, but lost doesn't come back the next day. "Thank you," I said, throat tight. "Please keep these clips." She patted my arm. "I will," she said. "I've got grandkids. I know where the line is." At home, I saved the video to the cloud folder. The pattern started to show itself like a sketch becoming a face. Dean texted at noon. "You need to apologize to Mom for slamming the door in my face." I closed my door to protect my child, I wrote. "Do not come back. If you do, I'll call the police." He responded with a laugh emoji and then, "You're going to look insane when this gets out." I put my phone face down and finished my sandwich. I taught Joe how to make paper cranes at the kitchen table. We folded Hope into a flock that stood on toothpick legs. That evening, Ezra and I separated tasks like we were prepping for a project he would speak to his HR about adding a note to his file refusing to receive visitors. I would draft a letter to my parents recapping the boundaries they were already breaking. We were not strategists by nature. We were ordinary people building an ordinary life. It was strange to use those same muscles to brace for family. On Tuesday, the diner again. Asha met us with a look that said she'd been waiting to tell me something. "Your dad came in yesterday," she said quietly as she refilled my coffee. He tried to book the back room for a family reconciliation. He asked how many kids we could seat. I told him we don't do surprises with minors. She rolled her eyes. "This is a diner." "Thank you," I said, "for telling me, for saying no." She patted my shoulder. "We've got your back." My parents arrived. Mom wore the seafoam scarf she'd knit to match the blanket I hadn't accepted. Dad carried a folder. When he laid it on the table, papers fanned a little. Ezra's eyes flicked to the edge of a printout, an article title about grandparent visitation cropped by Dad's hand. I didn't flinch. 1 hour, I said, reminding us all. Dad didn't bother with pancakes. He slid a sheet across the table like a contract. "There are pathways for grandparents," he said. "Mediation works best, but there are other options. Not in our state without a pre-existing relationship," Ezra said, calm, as if reading a manual, and there isn't one. Dad's gaze cut to Ezra. "We introduced her to Joe as a baby," he said to me, rewriting history with a surgeon's confidence. "You don't remember through your anger." "You never met Joe," I said. "I sent birth announcements. You returned the envelope." Mom's cheeks flushed. "We were scared," she said. "We thought if we responded, we'd be encouraging." "Encouraging me to be a mother," I said. "You were discouraging me." I got the message. Asha set 2 plates in front of us. She'd brought me toast, and Ezra a side of fruit. "On the house," she said. "You may not want pancakes, but no one should have to argue on an empty stomach." We smiled our thanks. We didn't eat. Dad kept his hand on the folder, like it might run away. "If you insist on treating us like adversaries, we'll have no choice but to respect our family," I said. "That's the choice." He stared. "You're making a mistake a child will pay for." "Then don't make me pay for yours," I said. We ended it there. No theatrics. We stood and left money that Asha tried to push back, and we gently refused. Outside, the heat hit us again. In the car, Ezra exhaled. "That was a shot across the bow." "I know," I said. "I heard it." We went home and wrote everything down. We sent a short note to my parents, polite and plain. "If you threaten legal action, all communication goes through our attorney. Until then, monthly dinners only." The next morning, Joe's teacher pulled me aside at pickup. A woman came by the office, asking about the spring recital, she said. She said she was Joe's grandmother. My pulse kicked. Did she say the password? She didn't know there was one, the teacher said. We didn't give any information. We called the principal. She spoke with her and asked her to leave. She did, but she was upset. "Thank you," I said. "Call me if anything like that happens again." I texted Ezra, Nia, and the principal a short update with the time and the description of the car. Ezra replied with a thumbs up, and then a photo of the dragon perched by a bowl of strawberries. "Guardian of snacks," he wrote. I saved it because joy is also evidence. That weekend, the packages started arriving again. Books, dolls, a glittery soccer ball. The cards inside said, "From Nanny and Gramps," in my mother's careful cursive. I refused them at the door, and then I drove the ones left on our step to the post office and mailed them back to the return address on the box. The clerk raised an eyebrow. I nodded. We didn't need to speak. Mom texted, "Why are you punishing Joe? Kids need gifts." I typed and erased 3 responses before I settled on, "We are teaching Joe that gifts don't equal access. Please stop." She replied with a heartbreak emoji. I put the screenshot in the folder. Sunday, I ran into my mother's friend from church in the produce aisle. She placed a sympathetic hand on my arm and said, "We're all praying for your recovery," in a tone people use at funerals. My recovery from what I asked. She looked startled. "From the anxiety," Linda said. "I'm pregnant," I said. "I'm not ill. And my anxiety isn't yours to pass around." Color rose in her face. "I didn't mean—" "I know," I said. "Please don't share gossip dressed as concern." At home, I wrote a short email to the extended family, neutral and clean, BCC'd, so there wouldn't be a fresh group chat for Mom to perform in. "Hi all, we're keeping this simple. We're rebuilding with my parents through short adult dinners. Joe is not meeting anyone until we're confident the adults can respect boundaries. Please don't share our schedules or photos without asking us. If you hear stories about my mental health or Ezra isolating me, they're false. We're doing well. We'll reach out when we're ready for larger gatherings." I hit send. Then I turned off my phone and took Joe to the park, where she taught me how to walk the low beam without falling. Arms out, she coached. "Look where you want to go." That night, an email arrived from a law office with a last name that looked like a furniture brand. It was professional and slimy at the same time. Our clients, Mr. and Mrs. Holt, are eager to secure a meaningful relationship with their grandchild. They hope to resolve this informally, but we are prepared to explore their legal options if necessary. It contained words like mediation and visitation and best interests of the child. And exactly one true thing: they wanted a relationship. The rest was theater. I forwarded it to Ezra and added our attorney's address. We hadn't hired anyone yet, but a friend of Marisol's had given us a name. Adrienne Pike, calm voice. Excellent shoes, razor brain. Adrienne responded within the hour. Received. Don't reply to them. I'll handle it. Send me your documentation and a timeline. We'll keep this on paper and out of your kitchen. I exhaled shaky and loud. I hadn't realized how much air I'd been holding. We met Adrienne the next afternoon in her office, where the plants were alive and the windows didn't need cleaning. She listened without interrupting. She asked clean questions that cut fat and left muscle. "Is there any text card, email, or witness indicating your parents met Joe?" she asked. "No," I said. "They didn't." She nodded. "Our state is strict," she said. "No established relationship, no pathway. They can try to scare you. They can't win this. But they can exhaust you if you let them." "We won't," Ezra said. Adrienne smiled. "Good. We'll send a formal response and a cease and desist about contacting your workplaces or Joe's school. If they violate it, we escalate." We handed her the folder. She flipped through pages, pausing on the doorbell clip, still image. "Keep backing up videos," she said. "Keep logs. Keep your faces off their stage." We left feeling taller by an inch. "I like her," Ezra said in the elevator. "Me too," I said. She didn't talk to us like we were fragile. At home, I baked a loaf of actual sourdough, because sometimes you manifest stability the old-fashioned way, with flour, water, salt, and thyme. Joe watched the dough rise like magic. Ezra carved an X on the top with a sharp knife, and the oven transformed it into something golden that sounded hollow when we tapped it. We ate half the loaf still warm with butter and honey. It tasted like normal. 3 quiet days followed. I almost believed we'd hit the pause button. Then the principal called. "Hi, Mara," she said, voice careful. "We had an incident at recess." A woman approached the fence and asked a student to deliver a note to Joe. My mouth went dry. "Did Joe get it?" "No," she said. "A para caught it." We called the police to make a report, and we tightened perimeter protocol. Joe didn't see anything. "Thank you," I said. "Can I see the note?" "It's with the officer," she said. But the para took a photo. She texted it to me, my mother's handwriting on a floral card. "Nana loves you. I have a teddy for you in the car. Tell Mommy to let you say hello." I swallowed hard. "We'll bring this to our attorney." "Do," she said. "We've marked your file. No contact, period." I sat on the floor next to the dishwasher and cried for 3 minutes. Not carefully, not quietly. Ezra found me and sat too, our backs to the cabinets, knees up the way you sit when when you're bracing for a wave. "Okay," he said after the 3 minutes were done. "We keep going." We sent the photo to Adrian. Her reply was sharp and clean. "This helps us. I'm filing the cease and desist today with explicit school language. If they come near the campus again, call me and the police in that order." That evening, another text from Nia Mom is saying, "You're refusing court-ordered mediation." She's lying. I told her to stop. She blocked me. "I'm sorry," I wrote back. "Thank you for trying." "Always," she wrote. "Also, don't be mad, but I told Aunt Jessa you're pregnant because she asked if you were okay. She's on your side." "I'm not mad," I said. "I just wish I'd gotten to tell my own news to my own people." We put Joe to bed with 2 books and an extra song because the day felt heavy. She asked if dragons ever get tired of guarding. "Sometimes," I said. "Then other dragons help." "Do we have other dragons?" she asked, eyes already drifting. "We do," I said. "They're loud and brave, and they bring snacks." The following Tuesday, the diner for the 3rd time. Asha met us at the door. "I'm off in 10, she said. "Do you need me to pretend the kitchen's on fire if things go sideways?" "We'll manage," I said. "But I appreciate the offer." Mom and Dad sat with their hands folded, empty table in front of them. For once, Dad didn't have a folder. He had a face like a door with a lock I couldn't see. "We got your lawyer's letter," he said when we sat. "Threatening us, setting a boundary," I said. "You've been at Joe's school. That's not just a boundary, that's a line in the law." Mom's chin trembled. "I just wanted to see her with my eyes," she whispered. "I didn't touch her. I didn't talk to her. I left a note by the fence because you think rules don't apply to you," I said. "They do." Dad's voice sharpened. "Do you enjoy humiliating your mother?" he asked. "Is this what Ezra teaches you, how to weaponize paperwork?" "I learned paperwork from you," I said. "Clipboards, lists, logs, accountability." He actually flinched at that. Asha stopped by with water we didn't ask for, and the kind of smile you give someone on a balance beam. "We are done for today," I said. Mom reached across the table. I didn't move. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know you don't believe me. I don't know how to make you." "Keep your distance," I said. "That's how." We left. Outside, the sky looked ordinary. Parking lot. Heat shimmers. A shopping cart with a squeaky wheel leaning against the curb. In the car, Ezra said, "We are going to be okay." "I know," I said. "I just wish okay didn't feel like war." That night, the cease and desist arrived on their doorstep, tracked and signed for. Adrian texted the confirmation and added, "Expect a quiet window or a flurry. Either way, you're prepared." The quiet lasted exactly 2 days. Dean showed up again. This time, he didn't ring. He walked around to the back gate and rattled it until the motion light came on. The camera caught his face in white blue. Ezra was home. He walked out with his hands visible and his voice calm. "Leave," he said. "You're not welcome here." Dean sneered. "Big man," he said. "Hiding behind lawyers and porch cameras." "Protecting my family," Ezra said. "Go." "You're tearing us apart," Dean said to me over Ezra's shoulder. "You'll regret this when Joe asks why we're not at her milestones." "I'll tell her we offered you a way back, and you chose the shortcut," I said. "Every time." He laughed. "Shortcut. You're the one taking the easy way, block delete call, the cops play victim." Ezra stepped closer. "You need to leave. Now." Dean took a half step like he might test the distance. Ezra didn't move. The light buzzed overhead, a cheap halo. Dean looked up at it, and then past Ezra into our kitchen window, where I realized Joe's dragon drawing hung with a tomato magnet at a perfect child's eye height. He shook his head once, disgusted, and stepped back. "You can't erase blood," he said, and left. My legs wobbled only after the back gate clicked. Ezra put an arm around me, and we stood under the cheap halo until the bulb cooled, and the night returned to normal. We wrote it down. We saved the clip. Adrian filed it with the stack. The next morning, I woke before the sun and lay there listening to the house breathe. The pipes settling, a car on the distant road. Joe mumbling in her sleep because she dreams out loud. I got up and made tea. I held the warm mug and thought about the child version of me who believed obedience was the only way to stay loved. I thought about Mom leaving a note at a school fence because admitting fault still felt harder to her than breaking a rule. I thought about Dad talking about rights and forgetting that love isn't a statute. It's a behavior. When Joe woke, we ate toast. She told me, very seriously, that broccoli dragons are the best kind because they smell like dinner and not like smoke. I kissed her forehead and decided to keep a list of small, ordinary things like that, not just the evidence, a counterweight. Later, after drop-off, I opened the folder and added a page at the front. Why we're doing this. I wrote, because Joe deserves safety over spectacle. Because apology is not a shortcut. Because love is slow work. Because we keep our word. Because we're building something she can stand on. Then I closed it and went to work. And when the doorbell rang that afternoon, I looked through the peephole and saw a uniform. A delivery from Adrian, copies of the filed letters, a checklist, a note in her neat hand. You're doing fine. Keep going. I tucked the papers away and looked at the clock. 20 minutes until pickup. I grabbed my keys and a bag of sliced oranges for the team because the coach had sent a message about snacks. On the way out, I straightened Joe's dragon drawing and whispered to it like a superstition. Keep watch, I said. It grinned back with crayon teeth. At school, the principal waved me into the office. Just one more thing, she said. We've updated Joe's file with a big red banner. If anyone not on the list asks about her, we call you, and we call the police. We've also briefed the recess monitors. No more fence notes. Thank you, I said, for taking this seriously. We do this a lot more than you'd think, she said gently. There are rules. We follow them. It helps. On the drive home, I passed the diner. Asha stood outside on her break sun on her face, smoking a cigarette, and laughing at something a cook said. She saw me lifted the cigarette in a little salute, and then pantomimed a big exhale as if she could breathe this whole mess out for me. I laughed in spite of everything and waved back. That night, Ezra and I sat on the couch after Joe fell asleep and watched a storm roll in without talking. Lightning stitched the sky, and thunder pressed against the windows. When the rain came, it was the hard kind that cleans a street in 15 minutes. We're doing the right thing, Ezra said finally. We are, I said, even when it feels like swimming in wet cement. It won't always feel like this. I know, I said, but right now it does. He pulled me closer. We listened to the rain until it turned to a hush, and then to nothing. We went to bed in a house that felt earned. In the morning, a letter from my parents waited in our mailbox. Not legal, handwritten. My mother's looping script filled the front and back of 2 cream sheets. It said they were sorry, and then it said I was cruel. It said they loved Joe, and then it said they had rights. It said they wanted to do better, and then it said I owed them. I read it once. I read it again aloud to Ezra. We didn't reply. We put it in the folder between the doorbell still image and the cease and desist receipt. I added a sticky note. Mixed message. No change in behavior. I looked at the clock. We had a meeting with Adrienne next week. We had a monthly dinner we might cancel. We had a child who needed new sneakers because she'd outgrown hers overnight. I laced my shoes and took Joe to the store. She picked blue ones that lit up when she ran. Lightning feet, she said, stomping in the aisle. She raced down the row and back and declared herself faster than a broccoli dragon. No offense, she told the drawing at home when we returned patting it as she passed. That weekend, Marisol and Ken came over with fresh tortillas and a bag of citrus. We ate tacos and laughed about nothing important. After dinner, Marisol helped Joe sew button eyes on a sock puppet named Captain Kale. Ken fixed the squeak in the bathroom door with a drop of oil and a whistle. The house felt like it remembered how to be a house. We were cleaning up when my phone buzzed. A blocked number. I almost didn't answer. I did. A woman's voice I didn't recognize said, "Is this Mara Holt?" "Yes," I said. "This is Officer June from the School District Liaison Unit." "We've had a report," she said, voice even. "Someone attempted pickup using your last name and claiming to be family." The staff followed protocol and refused release. "Your daughter is safe and in the office with her teacher. Can you come now?" My heart slammed once hard enough to make me grip the counter. "I'm on my way," I said. Ezra was already beside me, keys in hand. Marisol gathered Joe's backpack. Ken held the door. We moved like we'd practiced this even though we hadn't. In the car, my hands shook so badly I could barely buckle. Ezra drove with that quiet focus he reserves for heavy rain and bad drivers. "Password," he said, and I said sourdough like a prayer. We pulled into the school lot and ran. The office door opened before we got there. Joe flew into my arms, light-up shoes, flashing face, confused but calm. Ms. Ramirez said I could color in the office. She said like this was an ordinary detour. I drew a broccoli dragon eating a cloud. I kissed the top of her head until my fear melted into something softer, something I could carry. The principal met us with the officer. "Your mom showed up with photographs," she said gently. "Old ones of you as a kid. She tried to use them as proof. We called you. We called the police." She left when we told her the restraining order process was underway. I nodded. "Thank you," I said, "for being steady." Officer June handed me a card. "We'll file the report," she said. "Keep your attorney looped in. This pattern is escalating. The more you document, the stronger your case." "We have a folder," I said, absurdly proud of the paper fortress we'd built. "Good," she said. "Keep building." We drove home with Jo humming to herself in the back seat. The sky had that bruised look it gets before sunset. At a red light, Ezra reached over and touched my knee, that same quiet anchor he always is. "We're not alone," he said. "I know," I said. "I can feel the dragons." When we pulled into our driveway, the porch light flicked on. It caught the dust in the air and made it look like glitter. I unlocked the door and inhaled lemon cleaner and crayons and bread. Safe. Ordinary. Ours. I set Jo's drawing on the mantel, another broccoli dragon, this one, bigger, fiercer mid-chomp. I wrote the date on the corner. Evidence of joy. Evidence of why. Then I picked up the phone and called Adrienne. "Tell me everything," she said. I did. Adrienne and squared on the first ring. I paced the kitchen while she listened, pen scratching in the background as I described the attempted pickup at Jo's school. And the floral card with "Nana loves you" in careful loops. "Okay," she said when I finished. "We add this to the packet. I'm filing an emergency order today for school-specific no contact. If they show up again, call me in 911. Don't engage at the fence. Don't argue at the office. Keep it procedural." "Procedural I can do," I said, though my voice shook. "Breathe, Mara," she said softer. "You're not overreacting. You're doing exactly what a good parent does." After we hung up, I checked the deadbolt twice and the back latch 3 times. Ezra didn't say anything. He tested the window locks and replaced the batteries in the motion detector like we were prepping for a storm the forecast insisted wasn't coming. For a day, the house held its breath. We ate tacos. Jo practiced reading out loud from a book about a mouse who wanted pancakes and kept asking for more syrup. I tucked her in and sat beside her bed longer than usual, listening to the tiny whistles of her sleep. The next morning, my phone lit up with a group text I hadn't asked to join. Mom had added every cousin she could find and at least 3 people I didn't recognize. She typed long. She wrote about healing and forgiveness and how grandparents are a blessing, and then slid neat as a blade into the claim that Ezra and I were denying Jo her heritage because I was struggling emotionally and easily influenced. I stared at the screen until the words began to blur into gray blocks. Nia replied first. "This is inappropriate and untrue. Take this offline." A few cousins sent question marks. Most said nothing. I clicked the little arrow, left the conversation, and put my phone face down on the counter. Ezra read my expression like it was a set of blueprints. He pulled me into his chest, and my whole body unclenched by 1%. "I hate it," I said into his shirt. "I hate how public they want to make this." "They need an audience," he said. "We don't." Adrienne emailed a few minutes later. "Saw the group text, thank you to your cousin for forwarding. I'm adding it to the pattern." Don't take the bait. I looked out the kitchen window. The lilac bush out back had gone from promise to bloom, purple cones leaning under their own weight. Bees stitched the air. Beauty does its job no matter how we behave. I took the reminder like a vitamin. That afternoon, Ezra's coworker texted him. "A guy in a suit asked for you at reception, said he was your brother-in-law. We told him you weren't available." Ezra sent a thanks and a boundary. "Do not admit him. Call security if he returns." Then he texted me, "Heads up." Dean came to the office. "I'm leaving early." We ate early, too. Jo balanced carrot sticks on the edge of her plate and made them walk like tiny orange legs. I was scrubbing the pan when the doorbell rang, twice polite, then insistent like the day this all started. Ezra looked through the peephole. "It's Dean," he said. I wiped my hands and said, "We'll do this outside." I opened the door and stepped through before he could. Dean's face was flat with purpose. No smile this time. "You're making this nuclear," he said. There was a simpler way. "If there was, I said you'd have found it by now." He took a breath like he was about to deliver good news. "Dad has a plan," he said. "Mediation at church. Pastors offered the conference room. Neutral ground. We all sign a covenant, no lawyers, family only. No, I said. You don't even want to hear it. You just said it, I said. And the answer is still no. He stepped closer into my space and lowered his voice. You think a judge is going to side with a woman who cuts her parents off while pregnant, he said. You think people won't talk. People always talk, I said. I don't parent by committee. He leaned in until his breath hit my cheek. Open the door, he said. I want to say hello to my niece. No, I said again. He put his palm against the doorframe and shifted casual, as if a gust of wind might move us both inside. I held my ground. If you step into my home, I will call the police. I said each word separate, steady as a metronome. That's what cowards do, he said. Hide behind badges. I reached behind me, turned the key in the lock with a crisp click, and stepped sideways, so the door sealed between us like a closed book. Joe's laugh floated from the living room. Ezra appeared at my shoulder, silent there. Dean's eyes flickered to Ezra and back to me. You've always let men make your decisions, he said. I smiled without feeling it. I learned that from Dad, I said, and closed the door. He pounded once with his fist. The sound jumped through my ribs. This isn't over, he said through wood. Ezra held my gaze until I nodded. Then he called 911. It took 8 minutes. In those 8 minutes, I counted our breaths and the beats of Joe's song, and the number of steps from the kitchen to the front door. The officer who arrived wore a calm face that made me think she kept a cat and watered her plants on schedule. She took our statements on the porch, while Dean pretended to scroll his phone across the street like a teenager denied a turn at a game console. We're documenting, she said, eyes flicking to the doorbell camera. This helps. If he comes back, call again. If he enters, that's trespassing. If he lays a hand on either of you, we escalate. He grabbed my wrist last week, I said, and handed her the notebook with the time and the words I'd written down. She nodded. Good, she said. Keep writing. 3 days of quiet. It felt like the world had turned down the volume, like someone remembered to close a window we didn't know was open. I let myself believe we'd reached the end of this phase. I let myself be naive for one Saturday morning. We were building a pillow fort when a fist hit the front door so hard the wreath jumped. Ezra stood in one movement. Joe flinched. My stomach went cold. I looked through the peephole. Dean, red-faced, focused. He didn't wait for an invitation. He shouldered the door the moment I unlatched the chain to speak. It slammed into my shoulder and rattled the pictures on the hall wall. Joe screamed. The sound ripped through me. Ezra stepped between us in the narrow entry. Leave, he said, voice low and bigger than the hallway. Dean's mouth pulled back, not quite a snarl, something worse. I'm taking a picture with my niece, he said. 5 seconds, then I'm gone. No, Ezra said. Dean swung. It was clumsy and fast. Ezra dodged the first punch and caught the second with his forearm. The impact thudded like a dropped book. I fumbled with the phone and dialed 911. My voice steadied itself without asking me. There's an intruder, I said. He's my brother. He forced entry. He's attacking my husband. Joe's sobs turned hiccups small. I pulled her into the kitchen, shut the door, and slid down with her behind the island. We're safe, I said, a mantra I needed as much as she did. We're safe. We're safe. In the hallway, feet scuffed. A picture frame dropped, and glass tinkled into the baseboard heater like ice into water. Ezra grunted. Dean cursed. My heart beat so loud it drowned itself out. Police are on their way, I shouted, projecting through the door. Leave now. Sirens. Fast. Close. The officer from earlier June plus another boots on the porch voices, commanding the whole scene, pulling itself taller. Through the crack by the hinge, I saw Dean freeze hands, lifting a fraction jaw clenched like the rest of him. Ezra stepped back, palms open. Get your hands where I can see them, June said. He did. Step outside. He did. I opened the kitchen door and knelt to Joe's height. Hug, I asked. She nodded into my shirt. June took statements again, efficient and kind. She photographed the dent in the door, the scuff on Ezra's forearm, the shattered frame on the floor. You're eligible for an emergency protective order, she said. We can file tonight. It will be active until the hearing. What about my parents, I asked. My voice steadied again, as if shock had given it a job. They're the reason he's here. If there are part of the pattern, include them, she said. Judges read patterns. Keep your documentation tight. Dean watched from the curb while another officer spoke to him. He mouthed something I chose not to lip read. An ambulance arrived, unnecessary but thorough. Ezra refused a ride. The EMT gave him a frozen pack that crackled when he bent it. June came back with forms. We signed where she pointed. "You did everything right," she said. After they left, the house felt stunned. Ezra leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. I bandaged the small slice on his forearm like it mattered more than the bruise already pooling underneath. Jo stuck a sparkly star sticker on the bandage. For bravery, she said, very solemn. We slept light. Every house sound woke me. The ice machine thunked, and I sat up fast enough to make my neck twinge. Ezra pulled me back. "We're okay," he whispered. "We're okay." Morning brought official paper. A court-stamped copy of the emergency order. A hearing date circled in yellow. Adrian's email. "This is the moment we go wide. We add your parents to the order request. We bring the school incident, the porch, the forced entry, the attempted pickup, the group text. We present a pattern with witnesses. It's persuasive. Do we tell the diner?" I asked Ezra, looking at the circle on the calendar like it was a harbinger. "I'll tell Asha," he said. "She can decide if she wants to be a witness." I texted Asha a simple, "We might list you as someone who saw interactions. No pressure. Let me know if you'd be comfortable signing a statement." She responded with a thumbs up, and then a minute later, "I'll write it tonight. I have eyes and ears. I know what I saw." We drove to the courthouse 3 days later, clean shirts, copies of everything in a tidy stack. Adrian met us on the steps. Her calm steadied me. The hearing room was smaller than I expected, with brown chairs and a judge who looked like he'd seen everything and didn't have time to be dramatic about it. We told the truth. Adrian walked the judge through dates like stepping stones. Officer June testified about the school fence note and the forced entry. The principal spoke by phone about the pickup attempt. Asha had submitted a thoughtful statement about Dad's language at the diner. Mrs. Park handed over doorbell footage of my mother idling on our street, time-stamped and clear. My parents sat together 2 rows back, rigid. Mom dabbed her eyes when the school came up. Dad stared at a point above the judge's head, like he was listening to a radio only he could hear. Dean's chair was empty. The judge had read the police report and didn't need his performance. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. "I am not trying to erase anyone," I said. "I am trying to keep my daughter safe." I offered a slow way to rebuild trust. They refused it. Instead, they pushed past boundaries. "I'm pregnant, my blood pressure is up. I can't live like this." The judge nodded once. He spoke for 5 minutes without flourish. He granted the restraining order against Dean. He granted a no-contact order against my parents for any in-person contact and any contact with Jo or her school for a year. He said words like pattern of escalation and ongoing risk and best interests of the minor child. He signed papers. His clerk stamped them. The sound of the stamp was a comfort I didn't expect. Official, real, enough for now. Outside, the air felt thinner, easier to carry. Adrienne squeezed my shoulder. "You did well," she said. "This is a major step." I thanked her and meant it like prayer. For a week, silence. No packages, no cars idling at the curb, no calls. Even my aunts paused their commentary. We slept. Ezra's bruise faded from deep plum to yellow, and then back to skin. Jo drew a broccoli dragon so big, it filled the page teeth like Zigzag's tail wrapped around a courthouse. Then a letter arrived addressed to resident. It was a flyer for a church event, family restoration night, with a stock photo of hands forming a heart, and at the bottom a line guest testimony surviving estrangement. It was not subtle. The guest was my mother. I didn't need to read her name to know it. I set the paper down like it was warm. "They're going to stand on a stage and tell a story without us," I said. "They always were," Ezra said. "Only difference now is we know how to ignore the audience." I put the flyer in our folder and added another page to the front next steps. Ezra read over my shoulder while I wrote, "Change our phone numbers. P.O. Box for mail. Talk to Ezra's company about transfer. Ask Adrian about renewing orders annually. Tell Joe's coach about passwords for pickup. Consider moving schools if needed. Consider moving, period." "Do you want to move?" Ezra asked, voice careful. "I want breathing room," I said. "I want to walk into a grocery store and not scan for my mother's face. I want Joe to run across a field and I don't have to watch the fence line." He nodded slowly. My company has an office 2 hours away, he said. There's a role open, lateral move, less pay at first, but we'd make it work. I stared at the list. The words consider moving period seemed to pulse. Let's find out, I said. And we do it quiet. We didn't say the word escape. We didn't need to. We started dismantling our life the way you take apart a tent in the early morning, quiet, deliberate, anchor by anchor. I called Marisol and Ken. We might move, I said. Keep it just us. We'll help, Marisol said immediately. Tell me the day, and I'll bring tamales and labels. Ken said I'm bringing the truck. I'll change the oil first. I called Nia. Don't tell anyone, I said. Not even maybe friends. We need clean edges. I won't, she said. Text me a thumbs up when you land so I can unclench. We met with Ezra's manager. He had a face that defaulted to kind. I'd hate to lose you, he said. But I understand. The other office could use your steadiness. We'll make it happen. We walked out of the building with a mix of fear and relief bubbling in my chest. Ezra squeezed my fingers once. We're really doing this, he said. We are, I said. We're choosing our piece. That night, we canceled the next diner meet with a single text. We're pausing contact for 3 months per the boundary we sent. Please respect the orders. All communication through our attorney. Mom responded, we're praying for your heart to soften. Dad wrote nothing. Silence can be its own answer. We packed 1 box that night to make it real. Books from the living room. Joe's stuffed animals carefully capped in kale on top so he could keep watch. Ezra labeled the box in neat block letters. Living room books, treasures. He drew a broccoli dragon in the corner because we needed a bit of ridiculous in the middle of our plan. Before bed, I stood in the hallway and touched the dent in the door where Dean's shoulder had hit. I pressed my thumb to it and felt something I couldn't name. Not victory, not grief, maybe proof, maybe the opposite of pretending. I went to bed and slept through the night for the first time in weeks. In the morning, the world was ordinary again. Toast, shoes, a lost hair tie discovered under the couch. Ezra made coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. Joe asked if the new city had parks and if broccoli dragons could live in apartments. Absolutely, I said. They love elevators. We had a timeline. We had an order. We had a list of next steps stuck to the fridge with a tomato magnet. We had each other. We also had a month to get out. We circled a date on the fridge with a blue marker and called it moving day. 4 Saturdays away. Ezra wrote a list beside it. I added a second list because that's how my brain calms down 2 rails 1 track. Change of address. P.O. Box first. School records. Sealed transfer password stays sourdough. New OB. Appointment in week 2. Utilities. Overlap by 3 days. Phones. New numbers, new carriers. Locks. Change on day 1. Tell only Marisol, Ken, Adrienne, and Nia. We packed at night. We kept the house looking normal during daylight, like a stage set we were about to strike. Joe helped by putting her stuffed animals into a suitcase and unzipping it again because Captain Kale needs air. I told her we'd crack the zipper on top. She nodded like I'd solved something big. Adrienne coached us through the quiet parts. Never post a hint, she said. No last dinner at the old place. No so long neighborhood. Turn off location on your photos until you're ready to show the new life. Change your pharmacy and your pediatrician the same day. Close the old bank account next. Mrs. Park watched our street. She sent a text when the silver sedan appeared again, then another when it left. We logged everything. The folder grew thick enough that the clip had to work to hold it. On the second Saturday, Nia came over with deli sandwiches and flat boxes. I brought the good tape, she said, like it was a love language. She labeled in a neat hand and then blacked out our last name with a Sharpie so a random mover couldn't read it on the sidewalk. I'm not paranoid, she said. I'm prepared. We spoke in shorthand now. Prepared meant safe. Halfway through this third week, a flyer appeared on our Gate Family Restoration Night in bold. Mrs. Park had one too. Asha texted me a photo of the same flyer taped on the diner corkboard with a heart drawn around guest testimony. My mother stood at a microphone in my head, telling a version that erased the parts she didn't like. I turned the flyer over and wrote a grocery list on the back. Eggs, milk, patience. We kept our heads down. Ezra's transfer cleared. His new manager set a start date and sent a short welcome email that felt like a small bridge in a fog. I lined up Joe's enrollment for her new school. The secretary on the phone had a gravelly voice and said things like, "We'll take good care of her," in a way that sounded like a promise and not a line. The Thursday before the move, Adrienne called. "Good news," she said. "The clerk finalized the school-specific no-contact order. It attaches to your existing protection. If anyone on the order shows up, the school has a direct line to the liaison." "Thank you," I said. "We're almost out." "You're doing the hard, boring work," she said. "That's what keeps people safe." The night before the move, we left 3 boxes open for last-minute things. Joe fell asleep on a bare mattress in a fortress of cardboard. Ezra and I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. He slid his hand into mine, thumb, rubbing a slow circle against my palm, like he was polishing a stone. "We did everything right," he said. "I know," I said. "I just wish doing it right didn't feel like betrayal." "Betrayal of who?" he asked gently. "The girl I used to be," I said. "The one who thought if she obeyed, she wouldn't have to leave." We loaded the first wave before sunrise. Ken backed his truck up to the garage. Marisol set a thermos of coffee and foil-wrapped breakfast tacos on the porch. We moved like a team that had practiced. Boxes, straps, blankets over furniture, Joe's suitcase in my car. Captain Cale belted in with solemn ceremony. At 7:12 a.m., the silver sedan rolled past slow like a shark fin. It didn't stop. It didn't need to. I felt it like a temperature drop. "Keep packing," Ezra said. He didn't look up. His voice was steady. Ken stood taller. Marisol went inside and locked the front door. By 8:00, the first load was done. We kept back a broom, a box of cleaning rags, and Joe's crayons. "Goodbye, house," she whispered, small and serious, patting the wall with her palm. "Thanks for letting us live in you." We drove in a line truck car minivan to a storage unit near the highway to stash the first load while the other place finished turning over. The road hummed under us. The sky was a flat sheet of pale blue, no drama to match ours. At the storage unit, we moved in reverse. Boxes stacked to a labeled plan. Aisle down the middle. Living room bookcase, treasures at the back where it would be safe. Ezra sketched a quick map in Sharpie on the inside of the door and taped it like a blueprint. We returned for the second load. As we turned onto our street, a patrol car idled near the corner. Officer June tipped a hand off her steering wheel in a silent hello. I exhaled for the first time in an hour. "How did she know?" I asked. Marisol smiled. I told her the day and asked if she could swing by during her break. She shrugged. Mothers have networks. The second load went faster, less furniture, more sweeping. I found one small sock under the couch and a dime in the laundry room. Joe discovered a crayon wedged under the baseboard and declared it magic. We signed the handoff papers for the house with my Aunt Jessa's husband in the driveway. "I'll handle the sale," he said. "No sign out front. Private showings only. I'll call you when it's done." "Thank you," I said. He squeezed my shoulder once and left without asking for a hug. It felt like the right kind of care. Etienne de 23. As I carried the box labeled kitchen mixing bowls, a shadow fell across the step. I didn't need the peephole. I knew the stance. Dad. Mom behind him, eyes already wet. They stopped at the edge of the walkway like there was an invisible fence they weren't sure how to cross. "You're leaving," Dad said, as if narrating could change the scene. "Yes," I said, setting the box on the porch. "We're moving." "You can't run from blood," he said. "I'm walking toward peace," I said. Mom clutched her purse like a life ring. "Mara, please," she said. "We have a blanket for the baby in the car. Just 5 minutes. Let us pray with you. Let us bless your new home." "We have orders," I said. "You can't be here." He glanced at the patrol car at the corner, and then back at me. "You brought police into this family," he said, like an accusation and a lament. "You brought the law to our door when you brought force to our door," I said. "I brought paperwork." Ezra appeared behind me, not touching me, but close. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Dad lifted his chin. "If you step away from that man, we can still..." I raised my hand like a stop sign. "No!" For a second, the old dance tried to start. He waited for me to flinch. I didn't. The moment passed by itself. Officer June stepped out of her cruiser and walked toward us at a measured pace. "Good morning," she said even. "You folks are on a no-contact order. You need to leave." Mom's face crumpled in the shape of a story she'd tell at the microphone later. "We just wanted..." "Ma'am," June said, gentle, but not soft. "You need to go." Dad stared at me like I'd invented the badge. Then he took Mom's elbow. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't have to. The word had been living in us for weeks. They left. I picked up the mixing bowls. Ezra exhaled slow. June nodded once and returned to her car. We finished in under an hour. The last box into the minivan was labeled Joe Night Lights. I checked the closets, the medicine cabinet, the top of the fridge. Nothing left but the echo of our steps and a dent in the door we didn't repair because it belonged to the story and not to the next family. We locked the door and slid the key into an envelope for the realtor. I set the envelope on the counter and took one last look at the lilac bush through the kitchen window. Bees still working like always, I whispered. Thank you to the room that had held us when the world tilted. We didn't wave when we pulled away. We didn't look back. We drove. Joe fell asleep before the first toll road, lolling mouth open, light-up shoes, blinking every time the car hit a seam in the pavement. I watched the childhood version of myself in the passenger window and told her we were doing this for her too. 2 hours later, the new city rose up slow, low buildings, a water tower that looked like a white balloon, a strip of green where a river cut through. Our rental sat on a quiet street with a maple tree out front and a porch swing we hadn't paid extra for. The landlord met us with a clipboard and a smile that didn't try too hard. "Welcome," she said. "We replaced the locks this morning." Inside smelled like paint and pine cleaner. Light fell across the floor in long stripes. Ezra opened the windows. Air moved through. The sound of this neighborhood was different, bikes, a dog bark. Someone practicing scales on a piano badly and bravely. We set up Joe's room first. Her bed, her blue quilt. Captain Kale on the pillow. Night lights and 2 outlets so there wouldn't be shadows with edges. She ran her hand along the windowsill like she was promising it she'd learn its shape. "Is this home?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "This is home." We put the dragon drawings on her wall with painter's tape. Protector of snacks faced the door. Guardian of vegetables watched the window. Ezra assembled the crib we'd sanded years ago. I folded tiny onesies in a drawer and cried once quick and quiet, the way you do when your body remembers it's not only a container for fear, it's also a house for joy. We ate pizza on the kitchen floor from a box that went greasy in exactly one spot. Marisol and Ken arrived with a cooler full of food like they were opening a deli on our counter. Tamales, cut fruit, a jar of something pickled that made my mouth water. Ken tightened a loose hinge. Marisol blessed the house under her breath in Spanish, a soft stream of protection I didn't know I needed until I heard it. After they left, Ezra changed our phone numbers. We wrote the new ones on a sticky note and taped it inside a cabinet like a secret family code. I emailed the school secretary our new contact info and added sourdough to the file again. She wrote back within 5 minutes. "Got it. See you Monday. Welcome." We slept and dreamed about nothing. The house kept breathing without us noticing. Morning coffee that tasted like possibility pancakes that didn't burn new routes to map. We took Joe to see her new school. The principal shook Joe's hand like she was meeting a small colleague. Her teacher, a woman with silver hair and sneakers, showed us the reading corner and asked Joe what kind of books she liked. "Dragons," Joe said like it was obvious. "Excellent," the teacher said. "We have those." At the office, I handed over the sealed transfer file. "No release to anyone but us," I said. "Password policy in place. It's sourdough. We'll change it if we need to." The secretary nodded and typed. "We've got you," she said. "No one gets through the fence." We found a new OB 5 blocks from the house. The waiting room had plants and a bookshelf with dog-eared novels. The nurse put a cuff around my arm, looked at the number, and smiled. "Better," she said. "Lower. Keep breathing." I bought a new library card. The librarian stamped the back with a date that was already our life. Joe checked out a book about a knight who guarded a garden, and another about a dragon who loved soup. We carried them home in a tote bag Marisol had sewn with lemons on it, because of course she had. 2 weeks slid by before a piece of mail caught up a cream envelope forwarded from our P.O. box. Inside a letter from the same law office with the furniture brand name. It was boilerplate about ongoing interest in resolution and considering mediation and amicable pathways. Adrienne replied for us. "Our clients have relocated. Existing orders stand statewide. Any further contact will be considered harassment." I filed the letter without a spike in my pulse. Progress. Nia texted a photo of a group chat I wasn't in, my mother thanking the church for holding space and standing with grandparents who grieve. I typed and deleted, and then sent, "Thank you for the heads up. We're okay. Please visit when you can under the radar." She sent back a thumbs up and a heart, and then 3 broccoli emojis because she knows how to make a point without more words. Night sometimes woke me with its old tricks. I'd lie there and listen for a car that wasn't coming, for a footstep that wasn't in my hallway, for the sound of a fist on wood. Ezra would reach for my hand under the blanket and squeeze once. "Home," he'd whisper. The word would settle over my bones like a blanket from the dryer. We built small habits. Tuesday tacos, Thursday library, Saturday morning pancakes that always cooked to the same color because I learned the right heat. We walked to the park where the slide made a little thoop when a child hit the bottom. A kid with a gap-toothed grin admired Joe's light-up shoes, and they were friends by the end of the minute. I said hello to a neighbor named Callie, who walked a dog shaped like a loaf of bread and waved like we'd already met. I told the new principal the whole story in a measured arc during a scheduled meeting. She listened, nodded, and then added a bright red banner to Joe's file with the names on the order in capital letters. "We take this seriously," she said. "And if anyone tests the fence, we call you first, then we call our liaison." "Thank you," I said the words muscle memory now. Adrienne kept us a step ahead. "In 10 months," she said, "we'll file to renew. Mark your calendar. Don't get complacent when things are quiet." Quiet is when people like this try new angles. "What angles are left?" I asked. "Stories," she said. "They'll find new ears. Let them. You don't have to rebut every version." I wrote that in the folder under a new heading, "What we don't do." We don't reply debate. We don't justify. We don't explain to people who enjoy confusion. We wave at our neighbor and water the plant and show up for school pickup and keep our boundary lines painted bright. Marisol and Ken came every other weekend and turned our kitchen into a scene from a cooking show. Ken replaced our porch bulb with a warm LED. Marisol taught Joe how to press tortillas with her palms and turn them fast so they bubbled and didn't burn. "Hands learn," she said, grinning. "Brains follow." The only hiccup came when a letter from the old church arrived addressed to "Dear Daughter." Inside, a printed prayer, verses about forgiveness, a handwritten note in the bottom corner. "Our door is always open." I put it in the folder with a sticky note noted, "No action." A month in, Joe ran across the schoolyard to me and almost knocked me over. "We planted sunflowers," she said. "Mine is named Thunder." Also, Ms. P said we can bring a snack to share on Friday. Can I bring dragon fruit because it's named after dragons and also it's fruit? "Yes," I said, laughing. "That's perfect." We found a farmer's market on Saturday with a vendor who sold dragon fruit and smiled when Joe explained the theme. Ezra installed the baby's mobile over the crib. Green felt leaves. A wooden dragon that circled slow. I washed tiny socks and hung them on a drying rack like bunting. The air pressed softer on my chest. On a warm evening 2nd month in, I sat on the porch with a glass of water while thunderheads stacked themselves on the horizon like clean folded towels. The swing creaked. Joe drew chalk dragons on the walkway. Ezra tightened a bolt on the railing. Ordinary things performed themselves without asking for applause. My phone buzzed once with Adrienne's calendar invite, order renewal prep 4 months out, and once with a photo from Nia of her cat wedged into a shoebox like a loaf of bread. No unknown numbers, no withheld caller IDs. I thought about the door we had not opened, the diner pancakes we did not eat, the note at the fence we did not pretend wasn't a line crossed. I thought about Dad's hand on a folder and Mom's eyes at the curb, and the way both of them believed love could be demanded like a refund. I don't know if they'll ever come to the slow, hard work part. I can't live in their maybe. I can live here in the yes we made. Joe looked up chalk on her fingers and announced that broccoli dragons also like thunderstorms because the rain washes their leaves. Ezra grinned. The baby kicked firm enough to claim space. Inside, the oven beeped. Sourdough. We went in together. The oven beeped, and the whole kitchen smelled like home. Ezra sliced the loaf and steam escaped like a secret. Joe stood on a chair at the counter, counting the bubbles in the crust, deciding which half looked more like a dragon. Left, she ruled very official. The right one looks like a cloud. We ate with butter and honey that dripped onto our wrists. It was the first night where I didn't look at the door when a car passed. The maple outside held a breeze in its hands and let it go slowly. The swing creaked once and then fell quiet. I felt held. Days slipped into a pattern sturdy enough to walk across. Ezra biked to the new office. I waddled, then walked to the OB 5 blocks away. Joe learned the names of 3 new kids, and the librarian learned to set aside any book with scales on the cover. Officer June checked in once by email, no news her favorite kind. Adrian sent calendar invites like Lighthouse's renewal prep follow-up with school liaison update contact sheet. Each one arrived with that small thump that says, "We are still on this with you." At the end of week 9, our son arrived with a gulp of air so loud the nurse laughed. "Big voice," she said. "He's going to tell you what he needs." He had Ezra's mouth and my knees and a frown that softened the second Joe whispered, "Hi, I'm your sister," like she was telling him a secret agreement they'd already made. We named him Theo in the morning quiet. Not for anyone not to honor a tradition that had hurt us, just because it sounded like a bell we could hear from far away. Marisol brought caldo so fragrant, the whole ward smelled like comfort. Ken installed a nightlight in our room because the hospital lamps were aggressive, and we didn't need aggressive anymore. Ezra held Theo against his chest and said, "We did it," and I said, "We're doing it because I've learned there isn't a finish line to safety. It's a practice." I did not call my mother. I did not take a picture for anyone who had made a stage out of our lives. I held my son and watched Joe trace the pattern of his knit hat with one finger and felt the click of something settling where it belonged. The first week at home was ordinary holy. Sleepless nights, Ezra bringing water, Marisol reminding me to eat with that look moms have when they make you're not going to argue and you're not going to win. Joe invented lullabies for Theo that sounded like rain on a tent and made him hiccup in rhythm. Sometimes I cried for no reason, and then for every reason, and then not at all for a whole day. My body remembered how to become human again after being a house. In a quiet stretch between feedings, a letter found us. Cream paper my mother's script forwarded from the P.O. box. I let it sit on the counter a full day before I opened it because I wanted to choose my own heartbeat. When I did, it was different. Not absolution, not a performance. She wrote about the day she sent me out the door and how she'd told herself it was tough love because the alternative, admitting she'd let fear outrun her care, was unbearable. She wrote that the church event had made her feel important and that she'd realized afterward how much she'd used that feeling to cover the shame of what she'd done. She wrote that she had started seeing a therapist alone. She put 3 sentences in the center of the page with space around them, like a small altar. "We kicked you out. We ignored your child. We tried to force our way back in." She ended with, "I accept the orders. Accept your timeline. I will not contact you again for at least 2 years unless you invite me to. I am knitting squares and not blankets. Unfinished feels honest." I read it twice. I read it to Ezra. I didn't reply. Accountability is not an open door. It's a first brick where a bridge could someday stand. We left the letter in the folder with a sticky note. No action, watch for behavior, not words. The old world kept trying to leak in at the edges and then hit our fence and fall back. A cousin forwarded a clip from the family restoration night at my parents' church. A microphone tissue boxes a rehearsal of pain that left out choices and consequences. I closed it after 15 seconds because I didn't owe anyone my attention. A month later, Nia texted, "FYI, the church took down the video after pushback." I sent a heart and nothing else. It wasn't my fight. Adrienne filed the renewal with her usual precision. "Same facts, fresh exhibits," she said over the phone. "We add the hospital no-contact policy note to your file. We keep Joe's school updates crisp. We let their lawyer send long letters to the void." Their lawyer tried one more time to sound reasonable to propose grandparent mediation in our new county like geography could soften law. Adrienne responded with a paragraph so clean it shined declined. "Orders remain. Further requests will be treated as harassment." Silence followed the good kind. Dean did not reappear. The court's paper halo stayed over us, visible only when we looked up heavy enough to matter light enough that we could still breathe. Mrs. Park mailed us a postcard with a picture of a tomato and 3 words, "All's quiet here." Asha sent a selfie with the caption, "New dishwasher at the diner." No more puddles because life keeps doing life even when your story had a storm. Joe graduated from picture books to slim chapters and taught me to draw broccoli dragons with less lopsided teeth. On the morning she got to take Thunder, her sunflower home from school, she wore her light-up shoes even though the principal had declared it a non-light-up day. Ezra smuggled the shoes in his backpack and swapped them at pickup. Outlaw parenting, I whispered, grinning. Small rebellions, he said. The world widened in ways that didn't ask us to shrink to fit. Callie, the neighbor with the loaf of bread dog, became a real friend. She texted to ask if we needed diapers when storms were predicted, and offered her washer the day ours made a noise that sounded like a tiny ghost. Ezra's new manager turned out to be the kind of boss who says, take the time, and means it. Theo discovered his feet, and then his laugh, and then the particular joy of raspberries on a warm belly. The renewal hearing arrived on a clear morning. Adrienne prepped us with the efficiency of a pilot. Short answers, she said. Facts, not heat. The pattern is your case. Your calm is the pen that draws it. The judge, different this time, younger, tired in the eyes, read the file. A year, she said, signing. Renewable. The stamp thunked again. I exhaled on purpose. After the courthouse, we bought dragon fruit for Joe's class and a tiny lemon tree for our porch because we wanted a living reminder that roots could be grown in new dirt. We planted it in a pot painted by Joe Green swirls yellow dots. A dragon tail curling up the side. This is for patience, she announced, patting the soil. And for lemonade. That afternoon, a name from the old life lit my phone. Aunt Jessa. She wrote simply, I will come when you invite me. No questions until then. I'm proud of you. I cried into a dish towel over the sink because relief often looks like a sentence no longer being asked. The only bump came 3 months later when the school nurse called to confirm authorization for Tylenol after Joe tripped on the low balance beam and skinned both knees. Password, she asked. Sourdough. I said automatically, then caught Ezra's eye and shook my head. Actually, we'd like to change it, I added. We picked lemon tree. Tiny lemon leaves in our yard nodded like they approved. We celebrated the no-drama summer with a road trip the length of one nap. A lake that made Theo blink like it was a new color. A motel with a humming ice machine and a sign that glowed pink at night. Joe collected flat rocks and invented names for each one. Ezra taught her how to skip them 3 skips on a good throw, 1 skip on a bad throw, and a plunk that counts if you declare it does. We took a picture of our 4 shadows stretching toward the water, and I sent it to exactly 5 people. Marisol Ken, Nia Adrienne, because you're family, I wrote, and Officer June, whose reply made me snort laugh. 10 shadow form. Call me if anyone messes with your lemonade. When we got home, a package waited at the P.O. box. No return address. Inside 9 knit squares in seafoam, each one different cables and seed stitch and garter ends not woven in no border to make them one thing. A note on plain paper with my mother's handwriting. I'm still learning to stop before I bind off. This is what I can do without crossing your line. L. I put the squares in a drawer. Maybe someday they would become something. Maybe the drawer was as far as they'd travel. Not everything needs an ending to be valid. In late autumn, our neighborhood threw a block party with folding tables and bowls of pasta salad that tasted like childhood. Callie brought deviled eggs and a deck of cards because she knows the 2 main food groups are protein and games. A dad on our street set up a cheap karaoke machine, and kids took turns shrieking into the mic while adults whooped like they were watching a stadium show. Someone's aunt sang Stand By Me, half a key low, and still made me cry. A woman I'd seen twice but didn't know well leaned over the potato chips and said, You're the teach, right? My niece is in 3rd grade with a teacher who runs on coffee and compassion. I laughed. That sounds like a species I know. She tilted her head. You seem like you have a soft voice that could be loud if you wanted, she said. That's a compliment. Thank you, I said, meaning it. Soft voices that decide when to carry are my tribe now. At dusk, thunderheads stacked again, far off all show, and no sound yet. Joe chalked a broccoli dragon across 3 squares of sidewalk and handed me the stub. Your turn, she said. I drew a small lemon tree with a halo of birds and labeled it Patience because I'm not subtle anymore. Ezra passed me on his way to wrangle Theo before bedtime, bumping my shoulder gently with his. "Hey," he said, low eyes smiling. "Happy?" "Yes," I said without qualifiers, happy. A week later, a final letter from their attorney arrived, short, polite defeat in legalese. "Our clients will abide by existing orders. We consider the matter closed, absent your initiation." Adrienne forwarded it with a single line, "This is as quiet as it gets." We toasted with seltzer at the kitchen counter. Ezra tapped his glass to mine and said, "To boring," and I said, "To boring, because boring is beautiful when you fought for it." The only person I kept waiting for was myself, the me who had been trained to apologize for not setting herself on fire to keep others warm. She showed up one Tuesday afternoon when Joe brought home a writing assignment that said in crooked letters, and with a dragon drawn in the margin, "My mom's job is to keep our house safe and warm." I stuck it on the fridge with the tomato magnet and let the sentence live there without arguing. Winter landed soft. Theo learned to pull himself up and laughed at his own bravery. Joe lost a tooth and believed with all her body that a tiny winged banker wanted to trade for it. Ezra installed weather stripping and pretended it made him a pioneer. We made soup. We got the kind of text that normal people get. "What time Saturday? Can I borrow your drill? Do you want the Costco lemons?" There are so many. I still had days where the old soundtrack sneaked in Dad's line about rights. "Moms, we're praying for your heart, Dean's fist on wood." On those days, I walked the block with the baby strapped to my chest and counted porches. I named the paint colors out loud. I waved at dogs. I watered our lemon tree. I read the note at the front of our folder. Why we're doing this, because Joe deserves safety over spectacle. Because apology is not a shortcut. Because love is slow work. Because we keep our word. Because we're building something she can stand on. The words didn't get fancier. They didn't need to. On the eve of the new year, we lit 2 sparklers in the driveway and drew our names in the dark. Joe wrote J-O and then a star. Ezra wrote a heart that looked like a sideways potato and declared it art. I wrote a lemon and a dragon tail because the year had taught me I can be literal and still be a poet. Theo yelled happily at the sparks like he'd invented fire. Just after midnight, I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a clean page and did something that felt like closing a chapter without burning the book. I wrote to my parents, care of Adrian, so my address didn't have to be their business. We are safe and well. Our children are thriving. We are not ready for contact. If someday we explore that, it will be after the orders expire, and only if there is a sustained track record of change demonstrated privately than not performed. If you continue therapy, keep going for you, not for us. If you pray, let it be a practice, not a public relations plan. We will not attend events or respond to group messages. This is not punishment, this is protection. For now and for a long while, please let our quiet be ours. I signed it. I didn't reread it. I put it in an envelope and added a second sheet addressed to Adrian. Alone, if they reply, please acknowledge receipt and reiterate boundaries. No forwarding unless there's substantive change. I put both envelopes in the outgoing mail and slept like I had handed myself a key. The morning of Theo's first birthday, we squeezed family into our kitchen. Marisol iced a cake shaped like a lemon with a tiny green dragon curled around it. Ken took a picture of Ezra wearing a paper crown that said "One because our house understands humor now." Nia drove in, kissed my cheek twice, and put a crocheted broccoli in the baby's hand that he immediately tried to eat. We sang badly and loudly and blew out one candle collectively because we do things together when we can. I looked around the room and saw the validator Asha in a silly hat because she had become friend enough to come on her day off, the anchor. Ezra, always the revealer. Naya, who told the truth when it cost her group chat points, the manipulator missing by our choice, and the courts, and the innocent, too, actually, with cake on their cheeks. I felt the old ache for the parents I wish I had, but it didn't win. The new thing piece that we choose every morning won by a mile. After everyone left, I cleaned frosting off the floor one small smear at a time, because love is mostly maintenance. The door didn't slam. The phone didn't ring with danger. The porch light caught dust and made it look like glitter again. I carried Theo to his crib and stood there a minute, because standing there is still sometimes necessary. Joe tiptoed in and tucked Captain Kale under his arm. "You're the dragon now," she whispered to the sock puppet. "Take your turn." In the hallway, the dent in our old door lived only in memory, and even that was starting to sand itself smooth. On our new door, there was nothing but paint and the marks of our hands. I touched it anyway. We are not perfect. We don't need to be. We learned the difference between forgiveness and access, between apology and amends, between a performance and a practice. We learned it that you can love people and still keep your children far from the parts of those people that can't yet love without conditions. We learned that boundaries are not walls that keep love out. They're the fences that let love grow without being trampled. We learned to bake bread and to breathe and to change a password when it starts to taste like yesterday. If there is a reunion someday, it will be on new ground with new rules and more space around the parts that hurt. If not, we are whole anyway. I don't owe the future a promise I can't keep. I owe my kids a house that stays gentle, sometimes late when the lemon tree throws a shadow on the porch, and the swing says creak like a familiar word. I think about the squares my mother is knitting without binding off. I imagine them not as a blanket, but as something else: coasters, dish rags, a stack of soft proof that growth can be messy and partial and still be growth. I imagine her learning how to stop, which might be the first real thing she's ever made for me. I hope she keeps going. I hope Dad learns that love is not a ledger. I hope Dean finds a room where his voice doesn't sound like a fist. I hope mostly that none of that is required for us to be okay, because we already are. If you've walked this road, you know the strange grief of choosing your own door. You know the relief on the other side. You know how your hand shakes the first time you enforce the rule, and how steady it is the 100th time. You know the quiet that follows the storm, and the way your own laugh sounds new in it. And if you haven't, but you're standing with your hand on a doorknob that's hurt you before, here's my soft, fierce question, the one I wish someone had asked me sooner. What would your life look like if you believed that protecting your peace is an act of love, not a failure of it? For me, it looks like sourdough on a Tuesday dragon. Fruit on a Friday. A lemon tree growing roots in a pot. A little too small and doing fine anyway. A child who draws guardians on the sidewalk. A partner who tightens the porch bolt and kisses my forehead without asking what, from a baby who falls asleep with a knitted square under his cheek, and a door that opens only when we choose. We chose. We keep choosing. And that finally is the whole story.